Hello, I'm Elizabeth, an obsessive backyard gardener who might be able to offer you a couple of tips.
And I'm Keith, a landscape consultant, and I'm also passionate about gardening.
The one thing we both have in common is muddy boots. Muddy Boots is proudly sponsored by Clyde Compost, the premium compost trusted by gardeners who want results. Packed with goodness, free from nasties, and perfect for healthy soil and thriving plants. Visit ClydeCompost.com and don't forget to tell Vince
We sent you.
well done. Today we are diving into one of the tastiest topics for home gardeners, growing citrus and fruit trees in small spaces. You don't need a sprawling orchard to enjoy fresh lemons, limes or even apples and stone fruit. With clever choices, the right rootstocks and a little know-how, you can have productive fruit trees thriving on a balcony, courtyard or compact back garden. On today's podcast, we're going to talk about the best varieties, how to keep them healthy and manageable, and tips to make sure you get the sweetest harvest no matter how small your garden. Keith, why are citrus trees and fruit trees such a great option for small gardens?
Well, they're the most widely planted.
Widely planted, so they're very popular.
Well, yeah, I mean, just about everyone has got a citrus tree. And, you know, that they are the most asked question on just about any gardening show or gardening format. What's wrong with my citrus tree? That's generally the first question that comes out. But, you know, they're easy to grow if providing you just follow a few little lines.
And you start with some good soil, perhaps.
Starts with good soil, absolutely.
Okay, but they're good for small gardens. Why are they? Because they're good for any garden because you can get them. You can get a variety.
Yeah.
To fit in any space. Correct?
You can. Yeah. And they're mainly grown on a dwarf rooting stock today, so they don't get incredibly big and bulky and bushy. But once again, there's something that you really need to attend to and prune and do the right thing by them, and know when to prune. That's probably one of the big keys, features about it.
But you're going to tell us when. I hope you're going to tell us when in a minute. What should people look for when they're buying a fruit tree for a small space, especially in terms of the rootstock and the size and the variety?
Yeah, okay, so the thing that people need to understand, and this is where you really need to have a reputable nurseryman or nursery person to go and talk to about, because they need to know what the rootstock is that those plants are grown on. There are various types of rootstocks. Some make it rather slow growing, so that therefore they're a more dwarf in compact form. But the other thing too is that certain rootstocks will tolerate different conditions. So there's some rootstocks that will tolerate clay, heavy soil conditions, which normally citrus trees just don't like.
Yeah.
They don't like those heavy soils, but there are rootstocks that will manage those sorts of conditions. So you've really got to find a nurseryman that knows what they're doing.
And you want to know what you want to know. You need to know what questions to ask as
exactly,
well.
Yep.
Right, okay. All right, can you explain the difference between dwarf, semi-dwarf and standard trees and which you think are the most suitable for home gardeners?
Well, once again, it's going to get back to exactly what your rootstock is.
Yeah.
All right. So there's various types. So there's some that will tolerate the frost and the cold and heavier soils. Then there are other varieties that will tolerate more alkaline soils. So you really need to know the right questions. So if you're going to be getting a citrus tree, do a little bit of research. Go and know what your soil is. Go and have a look at it.
Yeah, but so there's a dwarf, but what's the difference between dwarf, semi-dwarf? Is it just one's small and one's medium and what's the standard?
Yeah.
What are the difference between those three types of citrus trees?
Well,
or fruit trees?
There's not an enormous big difference about them. You know, they're going to get to between 2 and 3 meters tall. But you've got to prune them to keep them at a manageable size.
So you make it a dwarf, or you make it a semi-dwarf.
Yeah, you can.
Is that what you mean?
And if you want a really productive small one, then the best thing you can do is grow them in a pot.
So that's okay. Well, that was another
Yeah.
question I was going to get to. So
Okay.
hang on. Another great option for people with very limited space is an espalier tree. That's something that we needed to talk about as
Yeah.
well. Now that's grown on like against a
frame.
fence or against a fence or a wall.
Yep.
I know you have an espaliered apple tree in your garden. Can you tell us exactly what an espaliered tree is and how easy it is to maintain?
Well, I've got two espaliered orange trees on our backyard too.
Oh, have you?
Yes,
Oh,
and they're
good.
grown on a fence. And we don't, because they're grown on a fence, we don't need to prune them whatsoever.
Okay.
I've got an organic pruner that comes along probably nearly every night and organically prunes the tops of the actual citrus tree.
What's his name?
It's Possum.
Possum, Mr. Possum. Mr. Possum.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that maintains that height.
Oh,
But,
good on him.
Oh, look, it's a little bit of a pain in the bum because they're very expensive to buy. Espaliered citrus trees, very expensive.
Why?
Because there's an awful lot of training that's got to go into how they're shaped up and all the rest of it. Because they're evergreen, it is a continual management and feeding program that involves how they're actually set up. So mine came from Marywood Nursery,
Marywood
from Chris,
plants,
England.
which you would recommend for
yep.
any espalier trees.
Yeah, well, he supplies mainly Bunnings. So if you go to a Bunnings
Yes, yeah.
outlet, you'll see mainly Marywood plants in there.
Yep.
But the way that they're done is they have to be perfectly flat. So you've got to keep on tying the new branches back and clip them back onto the actual board that you're growing them on. Ours are grown on lattice, which is probably the more productive way of growing them because it's a manageable size you can have them on.
Okay. So you said that they're quite easy to deal with, but they're not. But that's because you've got Mr. Possum doing your pruning for you. But they're not. You do need to. So they start off. Obviously, they've been trained to start with,
Yep.
and then when you get them.
Yeah. So someone would go and select them preferably, and try to find ones that have got a bigger front than they have a back.
Okay.
So if they're grown in a nursery situation, sometimes they tend to grow outwards rather than back and front. Okay. So if you're going to be growing one or trying to grow one yourself, go to a nursery and try to find one that you can actually pull the branches out and push back and clip onto the actual frame themselves.
Okay.
And then any branches that are coming out towards the front, you need to prune those off, or you need to be able to tie those back in so that you're covering that whole area. Because don't forget, a citrus tree in its normal environment is round, so therefore it's getting air and light and everything else going around the actual tree. But in this instance here, you're growing it onto a flat surface, so you've got to maintain as much of the foliage as you possibly can, so that it's getting enough energy to produce the fruit that's going to be coming on it.
Yes, and that's talking about citrus, but also with fruit trees.
Yeah, with any fruit trees.
Same situation.
But citrus are handled in a different manner. They are considered to be espaliered in a block form, rather than in an apple form where you got horizontal branches, or in a like a nectarine or a peach where they're actually espaliered so that they're a fan shape.
Yeah, okay.
This is just one big block of all foliage.
Oh, so citrus will stay in a block.
Yep.
Apples will go.
Apples will go horizontally, and so would pears. And your plum trees, your nectarines, your peaches are all grown in what's called a fan shape.
That's good advice. Thank you. I didn't know that. Okay. What are the best conditions for citrus and other fruit trees in small spaces in terms of sunlight, soil, airflow, that sort of thing?
Yeah, they've got to get as much sunlight as they can possibly get, regardless of what they're on. But soil is probably the most important thing, because they are very, very heavy feeders. They require an awful lot of food in order to be as productive as they could and should be. And your pH is also rather critical as well, yeah.
And
so
they're
you need to know
prone to
that.
disease as well, aren't they? The
Yeah,
old
they are.
citrus
But-
can be.
but once
Or
again-
bugs. pests.
Once again, if you're at the optimum end of the scale in terms of providing the goodness, then you've got a plant with a very, very high Brix level that is going to fight off and ward off pest and disease.
Okay.
And so they like good amounts of food, and they should be fed on a monthly basis, not a quarterly basis, but a monthly basis.
Yep.
And we always recommend which
Nutrogs Gigantic.
Gigantic, absolutely.
Thank you, Nutrog.
And the other thing you need to understand is that the citrus generally have roots very close to the surface, so they don't want competition. They don't want you planting lawn up around them, and they don't want you planting other plants in underneath, which are going to be competing for the available food that's in that soil.
Okay, so keep it clear.
So keep it clear
underneath. Okay. Is it better to grow citrus and fruit trees in the ground? This is something you touched on before, or can pots and large containers work just as well?
Look, large containers will work beautifully, and they don't have to be that large. You can get some really, really good plants that were very, very productive in pots, say probably around about the 50 centimetre size.
Okay.
So that's a great way of doing it. I've just recently bought a whole lot of Green Smart self-watering tubs.
Yes.
And in their brochure, they actually tell you how to set it up for growing fruit trees, so that they're getting access to plenty of water. And if you have a really good quality potting mix in there, and that's a real key
Yes.
component.
Yes.
And then rock dust is another great thing to be putting in there as well, because that's going to increase the Brix level of those plants. So they're in a tiny environment, so they need lots of food,
Yes, the
lots
good
of looking
stuff.
after, and they need to be potted up probably every 2 or 3 years.
Okay. How often should the rock dust be added?
Look, you can add the rock dust on a monthly basis.
Okay,
so just a handful, and you always put it around the outside of the pot, because that's where all the roots
are going.
headed to. They're headed over the outside of the pot because the pot's warm.
Yeah.
And then they attract that warmth over there. So you always feed them to the outer edge of the pot.
Can you add the rock dust at the same time as the Gigantic every month?
Absolutely.
That's okay,
Yep.
So it's not overdoing it.
No, not at all.
Okay. How do you keep fruit trees compact and productive? Like, what pruning methods work best? It varies.
It does.
That's a big question, isn't it?
It is.
'Cause
It's a huge
We start
question.
with the citrus.
All right, start off with citrus. You need to make sure that you are pruning at the right time. And the right time is after it's flowered.
Right.
Because you don't want to be cutting off any of the flowers, because there goes your fruit for the next season. So prune them after they've finished their flowering, so you know that you're going to be leaving the buds on there, so the new fruit are forming, and just tidy the whole thing up, and just shape it so that it's allowing air and light and all the rest of it to go around and through the actual plant.
Some citrus seems to fruit on and on and on, really. So
They do.
So
yeah.
when then can we prune?
Well, you can. When you're harvesting fruit off it, you can actually take the branches off them at that particular stage. So rather than just picking off a lemon or a grapefruit or anything else, or an orange, cut that particular branch off, and that will free it up to be more productive all the way through.
Okay.
But just watch for your flower buds. That's all.
Okay, so that's the citrus.
That's citrus.
You could go through all the rest of the stone fruit.
Apples are probably the easiest to look after. Because you've got a certain pruning time involved with those. Okay. You're pruning those preferably in the middle of winter if they're a normal grown plant, but if they're an espalier plant, you are pruning those in summer. So what's happening?
Remember all this?
Yep. What's happening in the summer on an espalier fruit tree is that the horizontal branches will produce upright growth coming out up the top, and they're the ones that you cut and prune back to the actual main trunk. You leave the productive buds on the tree, and you don't touch those. So it's just a bit of a tidy up. So you treat each horizontal branch as a column of growth.
Yep.
If just imagine it's a column of growth, and you just make sure that it's got lots of production in terms of leaves on it, and you just make sure that the buds are all kept and looked after on the actual horizontals.
Okay, and you're keeping those horizontals. Of course, you're keeping the horizontals. We're not keeping the. Hang on.
So
We're
it's
keeping
the verticals.
We're not keeping the verticals. We're
Pruning
getting
off,
rid of.
You prune off the verticals.
Okay, I haven't got any apple trees right now because I'll have to remember all that.
So which ones?
Apples.
We've done that.
Oh, what's next? Yes.
Well,
You've got your plums. You've got your nectarines. You can go on forever.
Yeah. Well, nectarines and peaches are actually very easy to prune because you prune those off once you've harvested the fruit.
Okay.
Now, I make it my purpose to wait until the fruit is nice and ripe, and then I prune the whole branch off behind the last fruit.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
That's generally done in summer with peaches and nectarines. So you prune off the whole branch, and you can take that branch inside and leave the fruit on the branch, and they'll last a bit longer rather than pulling them off the branch.
Yes.
And then what will happen then is that those branches that you've cut off, there'll be nodes and things behind that will produce a new branch coming off it, and that new branch is going to be next year's fruit.
Right.
So it's going to have flowers on it next year.
Yep.
And fruit on it next year, with any luck.
Okay. Do trees in pots need different watering or feeding routines to those compared to those in the ground?
Yeah, generally potting mix is free draining, so it tends to drain out an awful lot. What I would really suggest you do if you're going to be doing citrus in pots or even any sort of fruit tree in a pot is make sure that it's got lots and lots of goodness in there, and also think about adding some substances like either biochar or if you can get hold of lignite humate and mix that into the actual potting mix along with your rock dust and your gigantic
every month.
At the time
Every month.
So the charcoal from both the biochar and the lignite humate will actually absorb and hold moisture and food.
Right.
And the lignite humate, of course, it's only 20% carbon, which will hold 4 times its own mass in moisture, and the other 80% is actual fact is just humate, which is the building blocks of life.
Oh, perfect. You're going to have the healthiest citrus trees we've ever known, which I'm looking forward to because I'm getting some soon.
You'll be getting some.
What pests and diseases should small space growers watch out for, and how can they manage them organically?
One of the major ones you need to watch out for on citrus trees, apart from possums, is leaf miner. And it is if you go to a citrus tree on your, you're going to have a look at a leaf on your citrus tree and it's starting to curl. 9 times out of 10, that will be a leaf miner that's on the actual front of the back of the leaf, and it is just going around chewing off the leaf, and it's stopping the leaf's ability to produce the sugars through photosynthesis. So the leaf tends to curl over, and if you have a look at a leaf and it's got little wiggly lines all over it, that's leaf miner.
Yep.
The other one you need to worry about is citrus gall wasp, and a lot of people have got that, and that is a disease that we've inherited here in Australia because we produced it off our own citrus range, like the lime, finger limes, and these sorts of things.
Right.
That's where it originated from.
Yeah.
So, if you've got any gall wasps, cut the branches off and stick them in the bin. Or what you can do, if you can be bothered, if you've got a potato peeler, you can actually just run that over that lump,
big lump, yep,
and that will expose the little bug to the air and everything else, which will kill them.
That's a good idea. But you should still take the branch off.
I would look. I'm not big into potato peelers. I'd rather use the secateurs and take off the infected branches and throw them in the bin. Another thing that you want to look for on citrus trees is sooty mould.
Yes.
And the sooty mould is part of 3 stages of problems. So generally you'll get scale, which is generally on the back of a leaf, and it's a little black oval shaped critter that doesn't move. It's just stuck onto the back of the leaf.
Yes. Yep.
And it sucks from the leaves itself the 2 sugars that are created through photosynthesis, and it gets so much out of the leaves that it exudes it out through the back of their body. And that attracts sooty mould. So it's a fungus that will then put this horrible black sooty view over of the branches and other leaves.
Yep.
And then the other problem you get is ants the ants will climb up to those
Yes,
branches
yes.
looking for that sugary substance. They walk over the top of the scale. They've got their feet stuck with sugar, and then wherever they track that down over the branches and the leaves,
They're dragging it along.
they're dragging it with them, and that's where more sooty mold will come from. So it's a hygiene situation. So one of the best things you can be spraying there is eco oil and eco neem.
Yep.
But if you're going to be using eco oil, make sure you're not using it in the hot part of a day or in the hotter months, because it'll burn the leaves.
Yep.
But eco neem is fine to apply and spray. Make sure you're spraying the back of the leaf as well as the front of the leaf as well.
To run off.
Yep,
So
to
it's
run off.
dripping
And
away.
then if you do that on a regular basis, whatever chewing and sucking insect comes along next is eliminated.
Yay.
Eco neem.
Yay. Yep. Every week even to avoid, to prevent it from happening.
Just so it becomes somewhat systemic.
Yes. Okay. Can grafted trees with multiple varieties, like a fruit salad tree, for example, be a good solution for small gardens?
Look, they can be. I have yet to see a grafted fruit tree, whether it has one graft or 10 grafts, that is 100% successful. And by that I mean, if you've got a multi-grafted plant and it's a few years old, I would ask you to go and have a look at it, and you will find that out of those 2 grafts, one is more dominant than the other. Mm-hmm. Now, if you and that can be somewhat problematic, because that means that the more dominant one is getting more of the energy out of the root system than the other one. Mm-hmm. So the other one is not as productive. And the other problem then is that if you've got a multi-graft, how do you know how to prune it and look after it?
True.
So these fruit salad trees, as far as I'm concerned, are a real novelty.
Okay.
And they're not something that I would ever entertain.
Okay.
So my recommendation for that is that where you have trees that are multi-grafted, generally they are the cross-pollinator is part of that plant. So you might have a plum tree, and you have 2 different varieties that will be flowering at the same time that will then cross-pollinate. So you're producing the fruit from the cross-pollination. So in that instance, I always recommend that you buy 2 trees and plant them in the one hole.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
Then you've got control of both of those plants, and they're both going to be growing and being shaped in a manner that you can handle and look after.
And you can tell that there are 2 separate trees in
that
hole.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you treat those 2 separate trees as one whole tree, the way that you prune them and shape them on the outside, their height and everything else, and you don't want anything that is higher than your arm's length, because if you've got to get up a ladder, you're risking
not as
yourself.
much fun.
Particularly an old bugger like me.
Oh, you poor old thing. You're not old. You're very young. How long should gardeners expect to wait before their small fruit trees start producing a good, decent harvest?
It depends on where they've sourced their plants from. To give you an idea, I got some fruit trees from Phil Shepherd, and I got a range of fruit trees for a friend. And when I quizzed him about how I would look after each individual tree, he did say of one of them, which was the cherry, don't prune it, because the tree is substantial in size now, and there's no need to prune it. It will produce fruit this year.
Right.
Generally, the consensus is that if you're buying a new fruit tree and it's small and it's got fruit on it, take the fruit off for the first year or so, just to let it get big and bulky and really establish itself in that area. Yep. But sometimes, depending on the size of the plant, if it's a real thick trunk that it's got on it, there's enough sap flow in that to ensure that it's going to grow nicely.
Okay, fantastic. If someone could grow only one citrus tree and one other fruit tree in a small space, what would you recommend, and why would you recommend?
Well, most people will grow a citrus tree for a lemon.
Yeah.
And I think the best lemon is a Meyer lemon.
Yes.
And the reason I say
sweetest.
That is because it's got a beautiful thin skin and lots of juice and very, very few seeds.
Yes.
The second option for citrus trees would be one called Eureka.
Yes.
And the Eureka is one that you would classify as its poorer cousin as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
So the Meyer lemon would be my first choice in a citrus tree,
Yep.
and the second one would be the Eureka.
Fruit.
The next one is if you've only got 2 trees, you've got to then think about does that particular plant need a pollinator?
Oh, you're right.
All right, so that's your next problem.
So then you need 3.
And if it does,
Unless
then,
there's one next door.
yeah, well, there might be one next door, but you don't know. And you don't know
Look over the
if it's the right one. So what you can do then is do what we've just suggested, is plant the pollinators in the one hole. So that's taking up the space of one tree.
Yep.
So you can do the cross pollinators, or the other thing is think about the sort of fruit that you really love and enjoy, and that might be, say, a peach. And of course, the best peach, as far as I'm concerned, is the China Flat.
Yeah, they are delicious.
They are just absolutely superb,
yes, yep.
incredibly prolific, and a great little plant. And that doesn't need a pollinator.
Okay, well, that's
So
a good
there's some
idea.
options
So
for
don't
people.
forget China Flat.
China Flat.
Peach.
Yep, or
China
the
Flat
donut peach, some people call it.
Right, fantastic.
Little tiny fruit, little tiny seed in them.
And but the most delicious,
they're
the
just
most delicious
superb.
peaches.
Yep.
Well, I think that'll do.
I think we've done enough.
I think we've definitely covered the most important aspects of growing fruit trees in small spaces. Hope we've managed to show you that you don't need a big backyard to enjoy the delicious taste of homegrown citrus and fruit. With the right tree, a sunny spot, and a bit of regular care, you can fill even the smallest space with colour, fragrance, and delectable harvests. So if you haven't already, we hope you'll give it a go. I'm about to plant an orange, 2 lemons, I think, and a mandarin and a lime. I can't wait,
Beautiful.
because the soil's pretty good thanks to a bit of work that's gone into it. Thanks, Keith.
Pleasure.
Happy gardening. Thank you for listening to Muddy Boots. For more information on today's podcast, please go to muddyboots.net.au, and happy gardening.